"Mom, Sarah thinks it would be better if it's just our immediate family this time." Those words hit me like a slap across the face after I'd just handed over $8,000 for what I thought would be our dream family vacation to Disney World. My heart felt like it dropped straight into my stomach, and my hands started shaking as I stared at that text message on my phone. $8,000. That's what I'd spent on flights, hotels, park passes, meal plans, everything for my son Michael, his wife Sarah, and their 3 beautiful grandchildren. And now, 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, I was being told I wasn't welcome on the very vacation I'd paid for. I'm Dorothy Martinez, but everyone calls me Dot. I'm 72 years old, and I'm here in my cozy living room in Phoenix, Arizona, surrounded by pictures of the grandchildren I thought I'd finally get to make magical memories with at the happiest place on earth. Instead, I learned the hardest lesson of my life about family, money, and respect. Tell me in the comments what you're doing right now while you listen to my story. Are you having your morning coffee, maybe working in your garden, or taking a quiet moment for yourself? Hit that like button, because each like is so important to help my voice reach other grandmothers who might be going through something similar. And subscribe to Grandma's Legacy, because no grandmother should ever have to face family betrayal alone. You see, I'm sitting here now in my peaceful home, financially secure and finally free from the manipulation I endured for years. But back then, I was still the grandmother who couldn't say no, who always put everyone else's happiness before my own dignity. What happened next changed everything about how I let my family treat me. Growing up in the 1950s and 60s in a working-class Mexican-American family in Tucson, I learned that family came first, always. My mother worked double shifts at the local diner while my father labored in the copper mines, and they taught me that you sacrifice everything for your children. That lesson shaped how I raised my own son Michael after his father died in Vietnam when Michael was just 3 years old. As a young widow in 1973, I worked 2 jobs, mornings at the bank and evenings cleaning offices, to give Michael everything I never had. I saved every penny for his college education, went without new clothes for years, and even sold my mother's wedding ring to pay for his senior trip to California. Michael was my pride and joy, a straight A student who became an accountant and married Sarah, a pretty blonde girl from Scottsdale who came from money. The problem started almost immediately after their wedding in 1995. Sarah made it clear that my humble duplex wasn't good enough for hosting family gatherings. She'd wrinkle her nose at my home-cooked Mexican food and suggest we meet at restaurants instead, expensive ones where I always somehow ended up picking up the check. When their first child was born in 1997, Sarah established rules about visiting that felt more like prison regulations than grandparent guidelines. But I kept quiet and kept giving. When Michael started his own accounting practice in 2005, I gave him $15,000 from my retirement savings to help with startup costs. When they bought their 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, I contributed another $10,000 for the down payment. When the grandchildren needed school supplies, sports equipment, or birthday parties, Grandma Dot was always there with her wallet open. Michael would call me with that special tone in his voice, warm and loving, only when he needed something. "Mom, you're such a blessing to our family," he'd say, and I'd melt every single time. I lived for those moments when I felt needed and appreciated, even though deep down, a small voice whispered that something wasn't right about our relationship. Sarah, meanwhile, perfected the art of subtle exclusion. She'd plan elaborate family photos and somehow forget to invite me. She'd organize weekend trips with her own mother, but never suggest I join their adventures. At family barbecues, she'd seat me at the kids' table while her mother got the place of honor next to Michael. I told myself it was just personality differences, that I needed to be more understanding. The grandchildren, Isabella, now 21, Marcus, 19, and little Sophia, 16, were my whole world. I attended every soccer game, dance recital, and school play, even when Sarah made comments about how I was overdoing it with my enthusiasm. I started college funds for all 3 kids and gave them generous gifts at Christmas and birthdays, always trying to buy the love and inclusion I desperately craved. By 2018, I was 71 years old and had given my son's family over $50,000 throughout the years, not counting all the smaller gifts, dinners, and daily generosities. I lived modestly in my same little house, drove a 15-year-old Honda, and shopped at thrift stores so I could be generous with my family. I thought this was what good mothers and grandmothers did. We sacrificed so our children could have better lives. The Disney World conversation started innocently enough during Sunday dinner at their house in March 2018. Sarah was showing me pictures on her phone of her sister's recent trip to Disney with her kids, and Michael mentioned how they'd always wanted to take the children but could never afford such an expensive vacation for 5 people. "The kids are getting older," Sarah sighed dramatically. "Sophia might be too old for the magic soon, and Marcus is about to graduate high school. It feels like our window is closing for a real family vacation together." She showed me the price estimates: flights from Phoenix to Orlando, a week at one of the Disney resort hotels, park passes for multiple parks, meal plans, souvenirs. The total was staggering. I watched my grandchildren's faces light up as they talked about Space Mountain, meeting Mickey Mouse, and staying in a hotel with a pool. These kids had never been anywhere more exciting than the Grand Canyon, and they deserved to experience something magical. Before I could stop myself, I heard my own voice saying, "Well, maybe Grandma could help make this dream come true." Michael's eyes immediately brightened. "Oh, Mom, that's so generous of you to offer, but we couldn't ask you to do something like that. It's way too expensive." But I could see the wheels turning in his head, and Sarah got very quiet, which usually meant she was calculating something. Over the next few weeks, the conversation kept coming up. Sarah would mention seeing Disney commercials with the kids, or Michael would show me articles about the new Star Wars attractions. They never directly asked me to pay for the vacation, but they planted seeds constantly. "It's just such a shame that working families can't afford to make memories like this," Sarah would say with a heavy sigh. The manipulation was subtle, but effective. They'd invite me to dinner and spend the whole evening talking about how hard Michael was working, how tight money was with college expenses looming, how they never got to do anything fun as a family. Meanwhile, I noticed Sarah's new designer purse, their recent kitchen renovation, and Michael's expensive golf clubs, but I pushed those observations away. In May, I made the offer official. "I want to pay for the Disney trip," I announced during another Sunday dinner. "Consider it an early Christmas present for everyone." The explosion of gratitude was immediate and overwhelming. The kids jumped up and hugged me. Michael got teary-eyed talking about what an amazing mother I was, and even Sarah seemed genuinely appreciative. But then the planning began, and red flags started popping up everywhere. Sarah took complete control of all the arrangements, booking everything through her own travel agent without consulting me about preferences or timing. When I suggested we look at different hotel options to save money, Sarah insisted that since it was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, we needed to stay at the Grand Floridian, Disney's most expensive resort. The costs kept climbing. What started as an estimated $6,000 trip ballooned to $8,000, then more with add-ons and upgrades that Sarah deemed necessary. Character dining reservations, spa treatments, premium park experiences. Every conversation revealed new expenses that I was expected to cover. When I gently questioned some of the more expensive choices, Sarah got defensive. "If you want to give the kids a magical experience, we can't cut corners. This might be the only time they ever get to go to Disney." Michael backed up his wife completely, making me feel selfish for even questioning the spending. The most painful part was how I started getting excluded from the planning process itself. Sarah would text Michael about restaurant reservations and activity schedules, but I had to ask him to forward me the information. When I tried to research the parks online to contribute ideas, Sarah would dismiss my suggestions as not understanding how Disney works. 3 months before the trip, I started having doubts about whether I was actually invited or just expected to be the financier. When I asked Michael directly about the sleeping arrangements, he was vague. "Don't worry about details, Mom. Sarah's handling everything." But I noticed that every conversation about our family trip seemed to focus on Michael, Sarah, and the kids, with my presence feeling more and more like an afterthought. The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 2 weeks before our scheduled departure. I was having my morning coffee and organizing the Disney guidebooks I'd bought to prepare for the trip when my phone buzzed. Mom, Sarah, and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if this Disney trip is just our immediate family this time. Sarah really wants to focus on making memories with just her and the kids, and she feels like having extended family along might change the dynamic. But don't worry, we'll send you lots of pictures and maybe we can plan something together another time. Thanks for understanding. Love you. I read that message 5 times before the words actually sank in. Immediate family, extended family. After I had paid $8,000 for this vacation, I was being categorized as extended family who would somehow ruin their memory-making experience. My hands started trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. The coffee mug slipped from my other hand and shattered on the kitchen floor, but I barely noticed. The sound of my own heartbeat was thundering in my ears, and I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. If you're feeling the shock and betrayal with me right now, show your support. Hit that like button. Comment if you've experienced something similar with your own family. And subscribe because we grandmothers need to stick together when our own children break our hearts. I called Michael immediately, my voice shaking. Michael, I just got your text. I don't understand. I paid for this entire vacation. How am I not immediate family? His voice was strained and defensive. Mom, you know how Sarah is. She's been really stressed about this trip, and she just wants everything to be perfect. She feels like you might criticize how we parent or make comments about our spending. She wants to relax and not worry about managing everyone's needs. Managing my needs? I could barely form the words. Michael, I'm your mother. I raised you by myself after your father died. I gave you everything I had so you could have a good life. And now I'm not immediate family? It's just one vacation, Mom. We can plan something together later, just you and me and the kids. Sarah won't even have to be involved. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about Sarah at all. This was about Michael choosing to let his wife exclude his own mother from a vacation his mother had paid for. He wasn't fighting for me. He wasn't standing up to Sarah. He was going along with it and expecting me to quietly accept being discarded. So let me understand this clearly, I said, my voice getting steadier as the anger started building. You want me to give you $8,000 and then stay home while you all enjoy the vacation I bought? Mom, don't be dramatic. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Michael? Explain to me how this is fair or right. There was a long pause. Look, the money's already been spent. The reservations are made. If you cause problems now, you'll ruin the whole trip for the kids. And there it was. The manipulation laid bare. Pay for everything, shut up, and don't cause problems. Accept being treated like an ATM instead of a beloved family member. That moment was my rock bottom, but it was also the moment I found my backbone. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen for 2 hours, crying and thinking. I looked around at my modest little house, at the pictures of grandchildren who were being taught that Grandma's money was welcome, but Grandma herself was dispensable. I thought about all the years of putting their needs first, all the times I'd swallowed my pride and opened my wallet. Then I picked up my phone and started making calls. The first call was to the Disney resort. My hands were steady now, fueled by righteous anger and decades of suppressed frustration. I need to cancel all reservations under the Martinez party, I told the customer service representative. Ma'am, your check-in date is in 2 weeks. There may be significant cancellation fees. I don't care about fees. Cancel everything. It took 3 different representatives and 2 hours on the phone, but I managed to cancel the hotel reservations, the dining plans, the special experiences, everything that was in my name or paid for with my credit card. The airline tickets were trickier since they were non-refundable, but I was able to get them changed to credits in my name only. While I was on hold during one of those calls, I did something I'd never done before. I calculated exactly how much money I'd given Michael and Sarah's family over the years. Using old bank statements and tax records, I tallied up every loan, every gift, every picked-up restaurant check, every birthday and Christmas present, every contribution to their house, their business, their children's activities. The number was staggering. Over $78,000 in 23 years. I had given them the equivalent of a luxury car or a down payment on a house. I had funded their comfortable lifestyle while living like a pauper myself. Michael called me around 3 p.m., panic clear in his voice. "Mom, what did you do? Sarah just got a call that our hotel reservation was canceled." "I canceled everything I paid for," I said calmly. "Since I'm not immediate family and won't be joining you, I saw no reason to continue funding your vacation." "You can't do this. The kids are expecting this trip. Isabella already told all her friends at college about going to Disney." "You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family enough to join the vacation I was family enough to pay for." "Mom, be reasonable. We can fix this. Maybe Sarah was wrong. Maybe we can work something out." "No, Michael. We can't work something out. This isn't about one vacation. This is about 23 years of me being treated like a bank account instead of a mother and grandmother. This is about you standing by while your wife excludes and disrespects me. This is about me finally realizing that I deserve better." The desperation in his voice was something I'd never heard before. "What do you want me to do? I can't afford to pay for this trip myself." "That's not my problem anymore, Michael. You made your choice when you sent me that text. Now live with the consequences." After I hung up, Sarah called within minutes, her voice syrupy sweet. "Dot, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Of course you're invited on the trip. I never meant to exclude you. Michael must have misunderstood what I said." "Sarah, I have your text messages saved where you specifically told Michael you wanted it to be immediate family only. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was a misunderstanding." Her tone changed instantly, becoming cold and sharp. "Fine. You want to ruin your grandchildren's vacation over hurt feelings? That's on you. They'll never forgive you for this. My grandchildren will learn an important lesson about treating people with respect. And you'll learn that my money comes with my presence. One doesn't exist without the other anymore." The phone calls continued throughout the evening, Michael pleading, Sarah alternating between fake sweetness and outright hostility, even my teenage granddaughter Sophia calling in tears asking why I was being mean to the family. Each call strengthened my resolve instead of weakening it. That night, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I put myself first. I went online and booked myself a 7-day Alaskan cruise, departing the same week they had planned to go to Disney. If I was going to spend my hard-earned money on a vacation, it was going to be one where I was wanted and respected. The aftermath was swift and dramatic. Within 24 hours of me canceling their reservations, Michael was scrambling to salvage what he could of their vacation plans. He managed to book a much cheaper hotel off Disney property and could only afford 3-day park passes instead of the week-long experience they'd planned. Sarah's sister, who had been bragging to everyone about their elaborate Disney vacation, was suddenly very quiet on social media. The character dining reservations, the spa treatments, the premium experiences, all gone. What was supposed to be their once-in-a-lifetime magical vacation became a budget trip that lasted half as long as originally planned. The family's reaction revealed everything I needed to know about how they really viewed me. Michael oscillated between begging phone calls, where he promised things would be different, and angry voicemails, where he accused me of being selfish and vindictive. Sarah stopped speaking to me entirely, which honestly was a relief. The grandchildren's responses broke my heart, but also opened my eyes. Isabella, my 21-year-old granddaughter, actually supported her parents, sending me a lengthy text about how I was punishing innocent children for adult problems. Marcus, 19, didn't contact me at all. Only Sophia, the youngest at 16, seemed to understand that something wasn't right about how they'd treated me. But the most telling reaction came from my older sister Carmen, who lived in Tucson. When I told her what happened, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mija, I've been watching this for years, biting my tongue because it wasn't my place. But that boy has been taking advantage of your generous heart, and it was time someone stood up to him." My church friends rallied around me completely. These women had watched me sacrifice for Michael's family for decades, and they weren't surprised when the truth finally came out. Maria, who sat next to me every Sunday, told me bluntly, "Dot, your son learned to see you as a wallet instead of a woman. You did the right thing by closing that wallet." The financial reality hit Michael's family hard. Without my constant subsidizing, they had to make real choices about their spending. Sarah had to get a part-time job for the first time in their marriage. Michael started picking up extra clients and working longer hours. Suddenly, money wasn't flowing as freely as it had when Grandma was always there to fill the gaps. Meanwhile, I boarded my Alaskan cruise with a heart that was healing. The ship was filled with independent older women, many traveling solo, and I discovered a world I never knew existed. Women my age were zip-lining in Juneau, taking helicopter tours over glaciers, dancing in the ship's ballroom, and living full, adventurous lives. My dining table companions were a revelation: a retired teacher from Portland, a former nurse from Seattle, and a widow from Colorado who had taken up photography at age 68. These women talked about their travels, their hobbies, their investments, their independence. None of them were sitting at home waiting for their adult children to include them in family activities. "Honey," said Betty the photographer, "the day I stopped making my children the center of my universe was the day my real life began. They love me more now that I'm not desperately trying to buy their affection." When I returned from Alaska, tan and refreshed and full of stories, Michael was waiting in my driveway. The conversation was awkward and stilted, but there was a new respect in his voice that had never been there before. For the first time in decades, he was talking to me like an equal, instead of like someone he could manage and manipulate. The months following my cruise were transformative in ways I never expected. For the first time in my adult life, I had money in my checking account at the end of each month because I wasn't constantly covering other people's expenses. I started really looking at my finances and realized that if I stopped being everyone's personal bank, I could actually live quite comfortably. I redecorated my little house from top to bottom, something I'd been putting off for years because any extra money always went to Michael's family. I bought myself a new car, nothing fancy, but reliable and mine. I joined a hiking group for seniors and discovered that at 72, I was still strong enough to tackle desert trails I'd admired from afar for decades. The relationship with Michael and his family slowly began to rebuild, but on completely different terms. I established clear boundaries about money. No more loans, no more picking up restaurant checks, no more funding their lifestyle choices. If they wanted to spend time with me, it had to be because they genuinely wanted my company, not because they needed something from me. Sarah's attitude toward me changed dramatically once she realized the money train had permanently left the station. She became polite, even friendly, but it was the cautious friendliness of someone who had lost their power to take advantage. She started inviting me to family dinners again, but now she actually cooked meals instead of expecting me to pay for expensive restaurants. The grandchildren took longer to come around. Isabella and Marcus had been so accustomed to Grandma funding their wants that they didn't know how to relate to me without expecting financial gifts. But Sophia, my youngest granddaughter, started visiting me regularly just to talk. She told me that watching me stand up for myself had taught her something important about self-respect. "Grandma," she said during one of our afternoon talks, "I used to think you were just nice. But now I realize you're actually strong. There's a difference." I started traveling more, joining group tours, and making friends with other independent older women. I visited the Pacific Northwest, took a train trip through the Rocky Mountains, and even flew to New Mexico to explore my family's ancestral roots. Each trip taught me more about who I was when I wasn't defined by what I could give to other people. My financial advisor was amazed when I met with him for the first time in years. "Mrs. Martinez, if you continue living within your means instead of supporting other adults, you'll be very comfortable well into your 90s. It was shocking to realize how much of my security I'd been giving away to people who had their own incomes and opportunities. I also started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping other women who were learning to rebuild their lives and establish boundaries. My story resonated with many of them, not just the women escaping abusive marriages, but the older women who had spent decades being taken advantage of by their own adult children. One evening, about a year after the Disney incident, Michael came to visit me alone. We sat on my newly redecorated patio, and he said something that surprised me. "Mom, I owe you an apology, not just for the vacation thing, but for years of treating you like you existed to solve our problems instead of having your own life. It wasn't a complete transformation. Old habits die hard. But it was a beginning." He started asking about my travels, my activities, my opinions on things that had nothing to do with his family's needs. We began having actual conversations instead of him just updating me on his problems and expenses. The best part of my new life was discovering that I actually liked my own company. I'd spent so many years anxiously waiting for phone calls from Michael, constantly worried about whether I was doing enough for the grandchildren, always focused outward on other people's needs. Now I woke up each morning thinking about what I wanted to do with my day. Looking back now, I realized that Disney Vacation was the best thing that never happened to me. It took my son excluding me from a trip I'd paid for to finally wake me up to decades of financial and emotional manipulation. That text message, as painful as it was, set me free from a cycle of giving that had trapped me in a relationship built on transactions rather than love. I learned that there's a difference between being generous and being a doormat. Generosity comes from love and abundance. Being a doormat comes from fear and desperation. I had been so afraid of losing my family's love that I'd never tested whether that love existed without my money attached to it. The hardest lesson was accepting that I had enabled this treatment by never setting boundaries. Every time I swallowed my hurt feelings and opened my wallet, I was teaching them that my comfort and dignity were less important than their wants. I was showing them that love could be bought, and unfortunately, they learned that lesson well. But I also learned that it's never too late to change the dynamics in your family relationships. When I stopped funding their lifestyle and started funding my own happiness, everything shifted. The people who truly loved me adjusted to the new boundaries. The relationships that were only based on what I could provide simply faded away, and that was okay. To any grandmother listening to this who recognizes herself in my story, you are not a bank account. You are not required to impoverish yourself to prove your love. Your adult children should want to spend time with you because they value your wisdom, your company, and your presence, not because they need your financial support. If this story of finding my backbone and reclaiming my dignity touched your heart, like this video right now, tell me in the comments what moment made you realize you deserved better treatment from your own family, and subscribe to Grandma's Legacy. Because every grandmother deserves to have her voice heard and her worth recognized. I'm sitting here in my beautiful, peaceful home that I decorated for myself, financially secure because I learned to say no, surrounded by people who love me for who I am, rather than what I can give them. At 73 years old, I'm living the most authentic, joyful life I've ever had. And it all started the day I decided that respect and love aren't things you can buy, they're things you must demand. Remember, you taught your children how to treat you by what you were willing to accept. It's never too late to teach them something different.